A pleasant morning to one and all. Today, we have finally reached Session 8 of our blended modality training on conducting impact assessment on curriculum and instructional related programs, projects, and activities. And my topic for today is about reporting and using evaluation findings. But first, let us have our session objectives. By the end of this session, participants will be able to, first, identify the different types and purposes of evaluation reports and dissemination formats suited for varied stakeholders. Second, explain the importance of timely, clear, and audience-appropriate dissemination strategies to maximize the use and impact of evaluation findings. Third, engage in reflective and collaborative activities to analyze real-world scenarios and common challenges in reporting. Fourth, apply principles of effective dissemination by developing a tailored communication product, for example, policy brief or stakeholder summary based on sample evaluation data. And lastly, commit to at least one change in their practice of sharing evaluation results to enhance relevance and impact. Let us begin this session with a quick reflection activity. Please look at the questions on the screen. First, think about a time when you conducted or were involved in an evaluation in one of your programs, projects, or activities. It could be something formal, like a year-end review, or something informal, like a classroom survey or feedback session. Second, how did you conduct the evaluation? Consider what happened after the evaluation. Were the results used? Did it influence any decision, changes, or improvements? Or did it end up in a report that wasn't fully acted on? This activity helps us surface our current practices and challenges related to reporting and using evaluation findings. It also helps us reflect on where we are right now and where we want to be. Here's the template of our first activity for today. In here, you will write down the title of the PPA, what has been the result, and then your actions that you will take or have already taken. Evaluation plays a critical role in assessing the effectiveness, efficiency, and relevance of programs and policies. However, the value of an evaluation lies not only in the collection and analysis of data, but in the effective reporting and use of its findings. This report outlines the principles, formats, and strategies for reporting evaluation results and ensuring their utility among stakeholders with emphasis on accessibility, timeliness, and relevance. What is reporting and evaluation? Reporting isn't just delivering results. It's making those results accessible, relevant, and actionable for a specific audience. Effective reports go beyond what the data says to clarify what it means and what actions should follow. Reporting is a crucial bridge between data collection and informed decision-making. There's no one-size-fits-all report. Depending on who you're speaking to, donors, researchers, school leaders, you'll need different types. Some formats like policy briefs or dashboards are built for speed and clarity. Others like reports or data sets serve for transparency and accountability. Each format has a purpose and place. So for example, baseline report. When do we use baseline report? For baseline report, this establishes the pre-intervention status of key indicators. It sets the benchmark against which outcomes will be measured. For the preliminary report, it offers early insights into the implementation progress. It helps identify mid-course corrections. For final evaluation report, this presents comprehensive findings, conclusions, and recommendations based on the full cycle of the program. Whereas for policy briefs, it is a condensed, non-technical reports targeted at decision makers to influence policy and strategic direction. And lastly, for public data sets, these are organized datasets released for transparency, future research or replication, often with accompanying documentation. So as you can see here, for the different types of evaluation report, there is the report type, which has a specific purpose and which has their key features. For example, the baseline report. Its purpose is to establish pre-program condition, and its key features include contextual data, initial benchmarks, and methodology. For preliminary report, they provide early insights during implementation. So the key features involve initial results, progress assessment, and stakeholder feedback. For final report, its purpose is to present full evaluation results and lesson learned. So what are its key features? The methods, the findings, conclusions, and recommendations. The policy briefs, on the other hand, is a communication insight to decision makers. So its features include being short, focused, and actionable, and it has actionable recommendations. So you will see for policy brief, they are very short because, as we all know, decision makers do not have the luxury of time. So they have to be given a specific data. And lastly, for public data sets, they share data for transparency and reuse. They are clean data sets, metadata, and offer open access protocol. As the term implies, it is for public consumption. What is policy brief? A policy brief is a concise, visually engaging, non-technical summary of findings. It highlights what matters most for decision makers. It has clear implications and suggested actions. It's often the only document a policymaker reads. So make it count with strategic structure, visuals, and simplicity. As we all know, and as has been mentioned before, they do not have the luxury of time. So all the reports that will be presented to them should be concise and direct to the point. What is the policy brief format? It should bear the title, which should be clear and specific, ideally action-oriented. For example, improving learning equity through strengthened ALS delivery. Next is the executive summary, which ideally should have only 100 to 150 words, so that this section will give the readers just enough to grasp the essence of the brief without reading the full document. Next is the context or background, which briefly explains the issue being addressed. Why is it important now, or what policies or programs are involved? This should also include relevant statistics or context, for example, national or international goals, commitments, or SDGs. Next is the problem, which present the core challenge or policy gap. This should use evidence or data to support the urgency and scale of the issue. This also should explain who is affected and how. Next is the key findings or evidence. This summarizes the most important insights from evaluation, research, or practice. This should use bullet points or visuals like graphs or tables to be more helpful. And it should be kept clear and accessible and should avoid jargon. Next is policy options. This presents a few possible policy responses or intervention and briefly assesses the pros and cons of each response or intervention if necessary. And lastly, the recommendation. This is actionable, prioritized, and clear policy direction. It is tailored to specific agencies or decision makers. For example, DepEd should allocate 5% of the ALS budget to digital module development in 2026. For the conclusion, this restates the importance of addressing the issue now. It is a call to action. And lastly, this includes both the references or the sources and then the contact information for any clarification or follow-up. Let us look now at what makes a policy brief effective and usable, especially for education leaders and decision makers like our lawmakers, LGU officials, and DepEd partners. First, Keep it short and focused. It should ideally be 2 to 4 pages long. Why? Because our target readers are busy. They need quick, digestible insights that can inform decisions without needing to read long report. Second, use headings, bullets, visuals, and concise language. This isn't the place for dense paragraphs or technical jargon. Think of it as storytelling with data, clear, organized, and visually accessible. Third, write for non-technical readers, meaning we have to assume that the audience may not have the background in research or education policy. It is better to use plain language, define key terms if necessary, and focus on clarity. Fourth, be neutral but persuasive. Your brief should be evidence-based, rooted in data and research findings, but it should also lead to action. Don't push personal opinions. Instead, let the facts speak persuasively through clear reasoning and practical recommendations. In short, a good policy brief doesn't just inform. It helps leaders decide. That's our goal when we report evaluation findings through this format. Earlier, it has been mentioned that reports should reach its intended audience. So, how do we disseminate? And what are the principles of effective dissemination? Let us look at the principles that guide effective dissemination of evaluation findings, especially in education programs where communication with various stakeholders is key. Let's look at one of each principles and see how they apply in real-world settings. So first, we have clarity. Information should be presented in a way that is easy to understand. Avoid technical jargon or overly academic language. For example, instead of saying statistical significance, say the results are unlikely to be due to chance. Think of how you'd explain your findings to a parent or barangay captain. Simple, straight to the point, and no guesswork. Second principle, relevance. The content must be directly tied to the needs and interests of the audience. For example, if you're presenting to an LGU, you have to highlight how the evaluation impacts local school performance or funding decisions. Ask, what do they need to know to make decision? That's what you should highlight. Third is timeliness. Information should be shared while it is still useful for decision making or planning. Don't wait until the end of the school year to report findings that could have helped improve the mid-year programs. Timing is key and crucial. Timely reporting could mean the difference between intervention and inaction. Fourth is accessibility. Information should be easy to access and use by all stakeholders, especially those who might have limited access or technical capacity. Use printed infographics, translated materials, or community radio broadcast in remote areas. Look at how the data or the report will reach broader audience or general public. Don't assume everyone has the same access to internet. So you have to plan inclusively. Next is credibility. Findings must be trustworthy, based on rigorous data and transparent processes. You have to mention your sources, how data were collected, and ensure ethical practices were followed. When your data and methods are sound, your message becomes stronger and more convincing. And the refutable your sources are, the higher the chances that it will be taken seriously by the audience. Next is visual communication. We have to use visuals like charts, icons, timelines, or infographics to make your message memorable. For example, a single infographic can explain what 3 slides of bullet points can't. So you have to show, don't just tell. A good visual is worth 1,000 stats. So what is knowledge mobilization? It is going beyond distribution or making findings usable. No matter how methodologically robust the evaluation is, it is of limited use if the findings are not reported in a clear and accessible way that takes account of the various audiences for which the evaluation is intended. The knowledge transfer should happen. There should be a one-way dissemination. For knowledge exchange, there is a two-way learning with stakeholders. We provide them with the reports, we get feedbacks from them. And co-production, it is working collaboratively throughout the evaluation. They are involved in the process. They are part of the process. Their inputs are well taken into account and consideration. Why does dissemination matter? Again, dissemination ensures that findings don't sit on a shelf. It has to reach its target audience. The result has to reach the target audience. It legitimizes the effort behind data collection and creates pathway for use. When done well, it informs better decision-making, improves public trust, and ensures that data drives change. Dissemination is as much about influence as it is about information. So why do we report evaluation findings? To inform decision-making and policy development. To foster learning and accountability within organization. To promote transparency and public trust. To provide actionable recommendations for program improvement, and to ensure stakeholder engagement and feedback. Let us now look at the different formats for dissemination. We have full reports for technical audiences. We have executive summaries for decision makers who need clarity. We have infographics and dashboards for visual learners. We have social media and blogs for public communication, and short videos and animation to enhance engagement. As you can see, we have different formats for different audiences. We now have our slide on mapping beneficiary. When disseminating evaluation findings, it's essential to know who will use the information and how they will use it. This process is called mapping beneficiaries, and it helps us ensure that right messages reach the right people in the right way. So, who are our users or beneficiaries? Primary users are the funders and implementers. These are those directly involved in or funding the program. They need detailed, actionable information to assess the effectiveness and guide implementation. For them, technical reports or in-depth presentations are appropriate. We also have secondary users or the policymakers and service providers. The secondary users include people who influence or manage systems like policymakers and service providers. They benefit from summarized findings and practical recommendations that can inform policy, planning, or service delivery. Executive summaries or policy briefs work well for this group. For the tertiary users, they are the public and the media. They are the general public and they are not directly involved. While they are not directly involved, they play a role in shaping public opinion and demand for accountability. They need clear, simplified, and engaging formats, such as infographics, social media posts, or short video. So the strategy is to tailor messages to each group's needs and roles. The key here is to customize the message and the medium based on the audience. A one-size-fits-all approach often fails. By aligning our communication strategies with the needs and roles of each group, we can ensure that evaluation findings are both understood and used effectively. We now have here the stakeholder-specific reporting. As we can see, each stakeholder group has a preferred format and a content focus. Each stakeholder interprets and values information differently. Tailoring the message to the audience ensures higher engagement. Policymakers want actionable insights, while communities may prefer storytelling, and media may seek visual headlines. Again, knowing the audience lets us frame the message for relevance. Tailored communication increases impact. What are the different dissemination strategies? So we have 5. So first, we have targeted briefings, the direct presentations to key decision makers. Second, we conduct forums or workshops for group dissemination and stakeholder feedback. Next one is the digital platforms, publishing reports on websites and through social media. Next is media engagement. There are press releases or media events for public interest topics. And lastly, the knowledge products. These are the videos, infographics, and story-based communication. So we have to be aware of these different dissemination strategies for us to come up with the appropriate strategy for specific audience again. After conducting an evaluation, our job isn't done. The true value of evaluation lies in how its findings are used. Let's walk through 4 essential strategies to make sure our findings inform action. First, stakeholder involvement. We should engage stakeholders throughout the evaluation. One powerful way to ensure findings are used is by involving stakeholders from the start, not just at the end. For example, in a school-based feeding program evaluation, teachers, parents, and local health workers were involved in defining success indicators. Because they helped shape the evaluation, they felt a sense of ownership, and they were eager to act on the results when issues like irregular food supply were revealed. Stakeholder engagement builds trust, improves data quality, and makes findings more relevant to those who must act on them. Second, utilization-focused reporting. It frames recommendations around decision points. Reporting should be designed to support real-life decisions, not just to document findings. For example, instead of writing, "The literacy program should be expanded," a utilization-focused report might say, "To improve early grade reading in low-performing schools, expand the program to 10 additional schools in the division by the next school year, using the existing teacher-coach model." This kind of framing links directly to decision policymakers or implementers need to make about what, where, when, and how. Third, follow-up mechanisms. Monitor how findings are used and report on actions taken. Once findings are shared, it's important to track their use. Otherwise, reports might sit on shelves collecting dust. For example, after a school-level evaluation on teacher professional development, the team set up a 3-month follow-up meeting with the school head to document which recommendations had been implemented. This led to a status report showing improved peer mentoring system in 70% of the school population. Real progress backed by data. Following up reinforces accountability and creates a culture of action. Lastly, institutional learning. This creates feedback loops and evaluation to learning pathway. Building systems where evaluation feeds into continuous learning, not just on or one-off improvement. For example, a division office integrated findings from various school evaluations into their AIP. They also conducted quarterly learning huddles to reflect on what was working, what was working, what was not, and how to adapt. This created a learning loop where evaluation directly shaped planning and budgeting year after year. These 4 strategies, engaging stakeholders, framing findings for decisions, following up, and institutionalizing learning are key to making evaluations not just informative, but transformative. Remember, an evaluation's real impact is measured not by how thick the report is, but by what changes because of it. Even with well-conducted evaluations, getting people to understand and use the findings isn't always easy. There are several common challenges we face when it comes to dissemination, and let's get through them one by one. First is the use of technical jargon. Evaluation report often contains specialized language, whether we like it or not, like statistical terms, academic phrasing, or technical indicators, which are difficult for non-experts to grasp. For example, saying statistically significant at P, which is greater than 0.05, might make sense to a researcher, but not to a school principal. Instead, we can say, this change is likely due to the program, not just by chance. We need to translate findings into plain language for broader understanding. Second, political sensitivity of results. Some findings may point to underperformance, misuse of resources, or program failure, which can be politically sensitive. For example, if an evaluation shows that a flagship reading program had no measurable impact, some stakeholders may feel threatened or defensive. Approach sensitive results with diplomacy and balance, focusing on constructive recommendations and framing it as an opportunity for improvement. Third, complexity of findings. Sometimes, the data tells a complicated story with mixed or inconclusive results. For example, a program may have improved attendance but not test scores. This can make it hard to draw simple conclusions or recommendations. In such cases, we need to simplify without oversimplifying, highlighting the key takeaways while still respecting the complexity of the evidence. Next is information overload. Too much information, especially in long reports, can overwhelm stakeholders. For example, a 100-page report with no summary, visuals, or clear structure is unlikely to be read by busy decision makers. To avoid this, provide executive summaries, infographics, or highlight boxes that allow quick access to key messages. Lastly is poor timing. Even excellent findings can go unused if they are delivered too late. For example, if evaluation results are shared after planning or budgeting decisions have already been made, the window for influence is missed. It's important to align dissemination with decision-making timelines so the findings are relevant when they are most needed. So as evaluators or communicators, our role is not just to share findings, but to anticipate and overcome these barriers to understanding and use. That's how we ensure our work drives meaningful change. After identifying the common challenges in disseminating findings, like jargon, complexity, or poor timing, let us now look at some practical strategies to overcome them and improve the chances that our findings are understood and used. First is to co-develop recommendations with users. Rather than presenting a finished report with ready-made recommendations, involve key users like the implementers or policymakers in developing those recommendations. For example, After an evaluation of a reading intervention, the team held a workshop with teachers and division officials to co-create action steps. This helped ensure that recommendations were realistic, relevant, and owned by the people who would implement them. This approach also helps soften resistance to sensitive findings and make solutions more actionable. Second is to provide summary versions and visual aids. To avoid overwhelming your audience, offer layered formats of your findings. For example, alongside a full report, you might include a 2-page executive summary, a slide deck, and infographics showing trends and key outcomes. This makes your findings more accessible to different audiences, from technical staff to school heads to parents. Visual aids help clarify complex results and engage those who may not have time to read long documents. Third, build stakeholder capacity in data use. Sometimes, the challenge isn't the data. It's the lack of skills or confidence in interpreting and applying it. For example, a division office conducted short training sessions with school heads on how to interpret dashboard data and align it with school improvement plans. As a result, they were more proactive in using the data to guide actions. Building capacity ensures that stakeholders don't just receive findings, they know how to use them meaningfully. By involving users, simplifying communication, and building skills, we can overcome key dissemination challenges. These strategies help bridge the gap between data and decision, ensuring that our findings lead to informed action. How do we translate reports to impact? Reporting and using evaluation findings is as critical as conducting the evaluation itself. The credibility, clarity, and context of the report determine whether the findings will translate into meaningful action. By emphasizing stakeholder-centered reporting, timely dissemination, and adaptive use, evaluations can drive learning, improvement, and impact. There you go. We're now at the application stage. The activity, tailor the message. So, kindly choose sample findings from one of your school's PPAs. Given a set of data points, design the full chain, key finding, interpretation, recommendation, reporting format, and intended user. Given here are the steps or the guide questions for each step. Lastly, create a short summary for a chosen stakeholder. For the final reflection, here is the question. What is one change you will make to how you share findings? Lastly, I will leave you with this quotation. The real power of an evaluation lies in its ability to inform, influence, and inspire. Let's make sure we use the findings to shape better outcomes and lasting change. Thank you so much for listening.